Today is Monday, March 7th, 2016, and the title of this rant will be, Is Sanders the Ralph Nader of 2016? Just a quick aside before we go into that. March 7th used to be the feast of St. Thomas Aquinas from back in my religious education days. Yeah, I had to remember that one. All right, so back in 2000, Ralph Nader was running for president on the green ticket. One of his famous lines at that time was, Bush in one hand, Gore in the other hand. They're both the same. They're both corporatists. You're going to get the same. All right. Then we go to the election in 2000. The election in 2000 in Florida is exceptionally close. But what happened? Why? Because a lot of people, a fair amount of people in Florida voted for Ralph Nader. Also, at the same time, our friend Jeb, who was governor of Florida at that time, in conjunction with despicably Kathleen Harris, went about and discreetly, I should have said it this way, and discreetly and despicably got a lot of people who are on the voting rolls thrown out. And I can just give one example. If someone was lived in Ocala, and their name was Smith, and they lived in this area, and it was mostly a black area, then and they had a felony, then every single person with a Smith in that area got thrown off the voting roll. So a lot of people didn't get a chance to vote. And at the same time, we had the hanging chads, and we had a rush of Republicans, operatives who went down there, because I actually met one, and actually it was only about 7 years ago that I met him, and he told me the story about how he went down there. Of course, he hated Bush by the end of the Bush presidency, but he was down there fighting tooth and nail to make sure Bush got elected. So we had Ralph Nader running for president, 2000, green ticket, no difference between Al Gore, no difference between Bush. Bush got elected. Well, we see how that played out. Now, the reason why I say is Bernie going to be the Ralph Nader of 2016 doesn't have to do with Bernie himself. It has to do with Bernie's followers. He has a very ardent following, very vocal, very much in sync with his ideals. I agree with many of his ideals. I support many of the concept of his ideas. And, the question now, because I've been reading a lot on the, let's just say, the far progressive sites, where when they, and a lot of these people are really, really down, on Hillary. They're basically taking all of the Republican talking points and exacerbating them unbelievably. And the question is, are they going to boycott the election? And let me just give you, one example. So Hillary went somewhere in 2012, I think it was Bulgaria, or something like that, to talk about fracking to the ministers there or whatever. And all these people on the far left are all upset about that. But again, what is Secretary of State? Yes, it's a diplomat, but you're there to be representing the business interests of the United States overseas. That's part of her job. Now, I'm not saying that I agree with fracking in any way, shape, or form, but part of her job is to represent those business interests. And the other thing is that you're never going to get an ideological, pure person. You say Bernie's going to be a pure person, but, that's really not the case. Because we know, number one, and if we just use fracking as an example, Bernie wants to get rid of it 100%. Hillary, let's say, on a slower path towards that. And he's not going to be able to do it on day one. There's all kinds of licensing agreements that's already in place all over the United States, on federal lands, on private lands. Of course, all of the business interests in terms of those who are transporting the fracking material, selling the chemicals that are polluting the well water, those that are making the materials that go into establishing those wells, drilling those wells. They'll all have a vested interest in keeping that going. Now, again, I'm not saying they're right, but there's going to be pushback, and Bernie's not going to be able to do it, And they had a big thing on last night's debate about infrastructure. I think Bernie wanted $2 trillion and Hillary wanted $1 trillion. And of course, Bernie also wants to increase the minimum wage, just as Hillary does. He wants free college. He wants to do it by a transaction tax, increasing taxes on the wealthy, and all of that stuff. And again, the thing is, he's not going to be able to do that. The House is going to be in Republican hands. If you could take, again, and I've said this before, if you can take an inch from the Republicans on anything, and the example that Hillary made about the infrastructure is, you got to give the Republicans in some of those areas, you got to give them a good reason to vote for this thing. So the Republicans in poor areas of Oklahoma, Nebraska, let's say places like that, they get some infrastructure spending there, which is good for their economy. So, this is a dirty game, and you got to play it. You got to find a way to work with others. You got to make things happen. And what I'm really concerned about is when I hear all of these people indicating, oh, I'd rather vote for the Green Party. A vote for Hillary is a vote for corporatists. A vote for, Hillary is just a Republican in Democratic clothing. She's just like her husband. All of this stuff. But the point is, we are going to have a Democratic nominee. We've seen how terrible the candidates are who are on the Republican side, regardless of which one is going to be it. And even if you end up with John Kasich, John Kasich hasn't changed his position in 20 years. All right? The Republican Party has changed their position quite a bit in 20 years, whereas at one time he was further to the right than most Republicans, and now he's not far right enough, but he's plenty far right. So anyone that they get will be extremely far right. And anything on the on the Democratic side with Bernie or Hillary, is going to be far, be more beneficial to the country than even a John Kasich, who would be considered, let's just say, the most moderate of Republicans. So I'm really questioning where my sisters and brothers are on the far left who are condemning Hillary and clearly indicating that they will never vote for her. A vote for her, in essence, is a vote for John Kasich, and or one of the other two, because there's really only the other two in there right now, and that just can't happen.